Hello, welcome to RPLA Showcase. My name is Bill Opperman, and my guest today is Susan Dobson. Sue is a traveler and has called many places home. She has worked as a physical therapist in her native Australia, as well as in Switzerland and the United Kingdom. She now lives with her family in Central Florida. Sue's writing is inspired by her love of family stories, the humor and pathos found in the everyday, and her indelible Australian roots. Her first novel, Boomerang, was honored in 2020 not only with the RPLA Gold Award for Unpublished Mainstream or Literary Novel, but also the big one, the Royal Palm Literary Awards Unpublished Book of the Year. Sue Dobson, welcome to RPLA Showcase and congratulations on your awards.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's begin with the book itself, Boomerang, the unpublished book of the year. The logline reads, two preteen boys discover the joys and pitfalls of interracial friendship, misadventure, and revenge in this Australian coming-of-age story. Can you fill us in on the background a little more, and then won't you read us a passage?
Certainly, I'd love to. Boomerang is set in the mid-1970s in the West Australian goldfields. It is an area that is about 600 kilometres inland from the coast, and it borders the Great Victoria Desert. So it's a very arid place. The region is rich in gold rush history, dating from the late 1800s, and also the stories and traditions of the Wongatha people, who are the indigenous original owners of the land. The twin towns of Kalgoorlie, which is an Aboriginal word, and Boulder form the backdrop to the novel. I describe them as being divided by an invisible line and some staunch rivalry in the book. Apart from that, there's a hinterland behind Andy's house that's peppered with old mine workings. And it's a fantastic place for the boys to explore and for them to build a den. And there are some other iconic landmarks from the region as well. One is the Broad Arrow Tavern, which is outside of town. The boys get up to some mischief with some older teenagers and play a drunken game of cricket out there. And another iconic landmark that's in the book are the bordellos in downtown Kalgoorlie. Yeah. As far as the characters go, Andy Bridge is the 12-year-old narrator of the story. He's certainly somewhat naive and curious, but also very empathetic. He has to weather some scrutiny from the entire school and also the prejudice of his mates when he volunteers to show Archie, the Indigenous newcomer, around school. He befriends Archie despite everyone else's prejudice, and Archie becomes a catalyst for his changing worldview. Andy struggles with racism that he encounters in his community, and also, most disturbingly, at home. So I guess now I'll do my reading. So, all right. Prologue. Archie was my best mate, sure as Big Blue was my lucky marble. The moment he cracked that smile, crammed with whiter than white teeth, I knew. It made his whole face magic, and I wanted him to like me, to be my friend. It was that simple and that complicated. Chapter 1. First bell clanged above the morning chorus of kookaburras, mocking me. I ran the length of the empty playground, black lace-ups crunching on gravel. The little school entrance loomed ahead, cloaked in mottled shade, but my sister lagged way behind, crippled by her usual dose of Monday-itis. Get a move on, Jilly! Yelling made no difference. It took her forever to catch up. Stick arms dangled from her sleeveless school dress. Pale, knobby knees and sandals shuffled below the hem. You've made us late again. I swung the rust-scabbed gate open. Jilly's chin trembled. Don't leave me. I've got to go, Papa. But I have a really bad tummy ache. I can't help that. If anything, Jilly's Mondayitis was Miss Smiley's fault. Her blistering tongue and reptilian glare had terrified 5-year-olds since the dawn of the dinosaurs. You'll be all right, I lied, knowing the grey dragon would devour Jilly whole. Go on, I'll see you later. I nudged her through the gate and hoofed it. Same place as always, trailing after me. Puffed and sweaty, I threw my bag under the wooden bench that ran the length of our classroom and scrambled to line up in the corridor. I came second, sandwiched between Scabs Abernathy, picker and eater of scabs, and Dwyer, an unabashed nose miner. Towering like a lighthouse made it easier to look down the line to find my mates. Wayne grinned and tapped his watch, but Steve-O was too busy tying his laces to notice my skin-of-the-teeth arrival. Quietly, please, Mrs. Green droned as we filed in. Take your chairs off your desks and fold your desk covers. Bawling mine, I stuffed it into my library book bag and waited for roll call. I mumbled, present, when Mrs. Green called bridge and rested my head on my desk. By the time she finally got to Williams and Steve-O said, here, miss, Mrs. Green had parked her bum on the corner of her desk. Pay attention, class. She paused to smooth a wrinkle in her flower-covered granny dress and cleared her throat. I have 2 important announcements. Firstly, Mr. Smedley, the photographer, is at school today. I do hope you've all remembered today as picture day. Her tortoise-shell glasses roved along rows of pigtails tied in starched ribbons and carefully slicked and parted haircuts, hovering with exasperation over me. I'd forgotten to brush my teeth and my hair. My fingers tried in vain to rake the riot of straw tufts flat. Next, she smiled broadly, eyebrows arched, fingertips pressed together. We have a new boy joining us for the rest of the year. Her sun-speckled hand beckoned toward the doorway. I expect you all to help him settle in and make him feel welcome. A figure sidled in and stood at arm's length from her desk. Mrs. Green's smile didn't alter. His name is Archie Riley. We all stared. No one dared even whisper. Archie Riley was a shrimp, especially for grade 7, and dose of worms thin. He seemed mighty uncomfortable in his new school clothes, swivelling his neck inside the stiff white collar like a long-necked tortoise, shirt still creased from being wrapped around cardboard. But it was his skin that I couldn't take my eyes off. His face and all the bits that stuck out beyond his shirt and grey school shorts were so dark, yet his teeth and the whites of his eyes were so white. To my amazement, the lollipop pink tongue that darted forth to lick his lips matched his fidgety palms. Dark shoulder-length curls framed his face with tangled unruliness. My parents would never have let me keep my hair that long. Collar length was Dad's big concession to the 70s. Archie Riley's discomfort as he stood there in front of the class made him shrink beneath our dumbfounded scrutiny. His deep brown eyes wandered, refusing to settle on anyone or anything, eyelashes so long they nearly touched his cheeks when he blinked. Eventually, Mrs. Green broke the silence. Her eye ran along the first row and stopped at me. Andrew? Oh, no, just a moment. Meredith, dear. She pointed to the back of the class. Please move to the spare desk. Meredith, dear, the class brown-noser, grudgingly packed her pencil box, detached her library book bag from the back of her chair, and stomped to her new place. Mrs. Green placed Archie Riley at the desk next to mine, casting the hint of a smile my way before turning to face the blackboard. 40 sets of eyes glowered at my back during that first lesson. The new kid was too shy to look up, struck dumb, except when Mrs. Green asked him one question and the answer came half whispered. After algebra, we filed out to the playground for our class picture and the dreaded dose of Mr. Smedley's lymph humour. Fishface came every year, knee-high socks and sandals, beanpole thin, rounded shoulders, pasty skin, and stringy hair scraped ear to ear. He lined us up according to height and stacked us in 3 tiers like a bedraggled wedding cake. Me in the back by Steve-O, Wayne next row down, and the new kid up front. Mrs. Green stood to one side with a sign that read, Boulder Primary, Grade 7, 1974. Righto, Fishface waved. Everybody, look this way now. Hitching a pair of beige shorts halfway to his armpits, he made a sad attempt at a joke. What did Cinderella say when she left the photo shop? He chuckled, surveying us all expectantly. Nobody answered. One day my prince will come. He slapped his thigh with embarrassing enthusiasm. Get it? Mrs. Green faked a chuckle as Fishface clicked away. I poked Steve-O. Why can't he just make us say cheese like every other normal grown-up? Steve-O whispered back, What's that Abo kid doing at our school? I shrugged. I could see the top of Archie Riley's curly hair. I'd never had an Aboriginal classmate, and I wondered if the new class shrimp had ever had a class photo. This year's picture would be a first for me, and maybe for Boulder Primary. One thing was for sure, Archie Riley didn't have much to say cheese about that first day. That's the end of the first chapter.
That's terrific, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I dare ask what happens next?
Sure. As the story unfolds, what started out as a seemingly innocent story about 2 schoolboys becomes more dark. Andy is drawn into Archie's world more and more. An uneasy association develops between them and Archie's lawless teenage neighbours, which ultimately leads to revenge and tragedy, and Andy's heart-rending search for redemption.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that we frequently ask our RPLA winners is about the writer's journey, and we know yours started in Australia. Tell us about it.
Well, actually, I came to writing later when we were in England. It was about 2006, and John and I lived with our 2 young daughters. One Easter morning, I just got up and I thought it would be fun to write a story for the girls. So I started doodling in a sketchbook and writing a comical story about our much beloved adopted dog. We'd adopted her from here, actually, in Florida, and taken her back with us to England. And I think that's when I discovered how much I enjoyed creative writing. And not long after that, the seeds for Boomerang were sown. I found an old class photo of me when I was in the 1st grade, and it reminded me of the single Indigenous boy in a class of 40 children. And he kind of became the inspiration for Archie, who is, Andy's free-spirited, mischievous mate. As far as Boomerang goes, I didn't really even set out to write a novel. I was simply having a great time with the characters and scenes that were blooming in my imagination and wanted to start recording those. But because I was a working mum, time was short, I eventually shelved the incomplete manuscript and felt dubious about what I was even doing
Mm.
and whether it would even see the light of day. So then I guess if I fast forward to 2013, we had moved to Florida by that time. And I had undergone treatment for breast cancer and decided that life really is too short to put off the bucket list. So one of the first things I did was to look for a writing critique group. And I was very fortunate to join an excellent one. We jokingly call ourselves the misplaced modifiers. Um,
They
and
must be good.
oh, they're great. They're really great. And with their help and also input from beta readers, both here and in Australia, I completed a first draft and a revision of the manuscript and sent it out to a handful of agents. In hindsight, somewhat prematurely, I felt that the story had wide appeal, and I wasn't sure whether to promote it as YA or mainstream. So when I was actually preparing my second novel, which is The Sea Glass Road, to enter it in the RPLAs last year, I decided to dust off Boomerang, and I revised it once more. And I guess hungry for the judges' feedback and those all-important rubrics, I was hoping that my little orphan story would make it past the first round of judging, and that I would have some idea of how I could improve it and where I could place it.
Your orphan did pretty well, I'd say. What was the RPLA experience like for you?
Well, it was surreal, honestly. For a start, John and I watched the ceremony from a windowless hospital room. We shared a takeout pizza, and in my case, it was washed down with a nice cocktail of IV antibiotics and pain meds. So I'm probably feeling a bit woozy. And also, I really didn't expect that Boomerang would do so well. I was genuinely surprised and delighted to hear my logline being read when they announced mainstream gold. And we were both so excited, we almost missed the announcement for Unpublished Book of the Year. So it was
Don't want to
wonderful.
miss that.
No, but it was wonderful. And I do feel incredibly honoured that the RPLA judges chose Boomerang. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to them and everyone who's involved in FWA. And also congratulations to the many writers who submitted their work, because really it is a lot of work to get to that stage. And especially to those who were recognised by the judges. I feel humbled to be among you. Thank you.
Have you heard from any expectant publishers yet?
No, not yet. I'm sort of just at the beginning of that process, but I'm working on it. I've spent the last few months exploring webinars and participating in writing boot camps so that I can I can polish my submission materials.
Oh, yes. Those things they never told us about when they were encouraging us to be writers in high school.
Yes, that's true. I think, the road to publication presents quite a different set of challenges to those that you have as a writer. I have started researching agents and sending out queries. And I recall at last year's conference, one agent saying, aim for 100 rejections a year. So I'm officially diving in. Yeah, and in the meantime, I've been working on revising Sea Glass and polishing that. And I actually am about a third of the way into writing a third novel, which is quite different. It's rather than being in Australia, it's set in Florida. And it revolves around adoption and fertility issues.
I see. Okay. We're running a little late on time, but I did want to ask, the hearing you read brought so much richness in your accent and the word choices. What was it like to try to write a story about Australia for, I presume, an American audience?
I think one of the main challenges is just being able to include authentic Australian phrases and dialect without needing a glossary. So my critique partners were great, helping me, to recognise places where they were saying, what's that mean? And I had to make sure that I could make things apparent through the text.
Well, in the parts that you read, I didn't find a single spot where I didn't know what was being referred
Oh,
to, even though the word itself was totally new to me.
well, great. That's good. Hopefully, mission accomplished.
I think so. Sue Dobson, it has been a real treat to spend these few minutes with you. Thanks for coming along for the ride.
It's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Bill.
And folks, if you would like to know more about the inspiration for Boomerang or Sue's second novel, The Sea Glass Road, visit her website, www.susanfdobson.com. That's Susan F for Francis, I'm told, Dobson.com. And you can also follow her on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks again, Susan. We'll see you
Thank
soon.
you, Bill. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.